What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the second album by rapper Young Dro. Basically, this project is called High Times, and it came out in the fall of 2013. So the thing about this particular project is just the fact that Young Dro basically took off about 7 years between Best Thing Smoking from the summer of 2006 to this particular album in the fall of 2013. Now, really, if you know Young Dro's mixtape fare, he had been around throughout these years. Just in particular, he dropped a number of mixtapes between like at least 2008. He didn't drop that many mixtapes in 2007 after Best Thing Smoking came out, but he was originally going to put out an album in 2008 and 2009. It had at least a song on there with Young LA, which is a pretty good song. I think it was called like Takeoff or something like that. I remember really being excited for like the second Young Dro album that was supposed to come out 2008, 2009. Never happened, but I think that particular song wound up being on a mixtape. But I look after it, it got delayed repeatedly. He finally dropped this particular project. Yeah, it took Young Dro 7 years to finally follow up with another studio album. Now, the pitch behind it is obviously a lot had changed in rap music since the swag rap days of like the mid 2000s to about these particular days when early 2010s trap and then the DJ Mustard kind of ratchet sound was taken over. But Young Dro translates to these sounds pretty well. It's actually a pretty bona fide type project here just to be able to get this within the aspect of all the multitudes of styles, despite the fact that for the most part, Young Dro is always seen as like T.I.'s wingman. He handles a lot of these styles and it's pretty affable about doing it. It's actually a pretty well balanced and going to get over a pretty above average type score on here, I'd have to say. This is a good consistent, especially considering all these years removed. It's kind of surprising that he even put out this particular album because most folks around that particular time were not really dropping albums. When you think of folks that were kind of becoming one hit wonders, like DJ Unk had disappeared, and I think of some other ones like Jibs had disappeared. Some of those type folks that were popular in like the mid 2000s, some of those type folks that were more part of like the ringtone rap era, and other folks like Jeezy and some of those type folks, Jeezy, Bun B, and like folks like that had kind of switched their styles up. I would have to say some of those type pitches. Ti had kind of switched his style up to differential things. So just some of those particular type pitches, Lil Wayne. But I just look after just being able to suppose the concept behind it is this is a pretty trendy type project, at least to like the circa what was around in 2013, 2014. Just an excellent type pitch. Just breathe some new life into Young Dro as far as those pitches going to happen. I mean, it may not. I feel like this is at least good in like the hardcore type territory. There are some decent radio grabs on here to at least attempt to get him in more like territory, but this is kind of concept at this particular stage. It kind of felt like Young Dro was also. It's not to say anything against the quality of the album, but it just felt like he was more a product of like afterthoughts more so than like the concept of trying to break new molds and kind of be seen as like a household name again. Which just it was kind of disappointing that his run in 2006 2007 was cut short as much as it was, just because Rubber Band Banks didn't really catch on, which was a huge disappointment just because that's a really excellent song. I mean, I can see it not having like the overall commercial bite of Shoulder Lean just because it didn't have like the dance towards it and it didn't have like the overall this kind of commodity of just like the casual snap about it, but it is like a pretty good song and it's a good kind of in between type song to kind of get is in the tone of having like some extra bops if you're just looking for more of like mid 2000s southern rap. Look after it. His thing, he does have two singles out this particular product. One in particular, FDB, which stands for Fuck That Bitch. It's a pretty boisterous type song. I wasn't expecting this particular song to have like 37, 40 million plays on Spotify, so it's an interesting pitch that this did pretty well. Kind of got his name back in people's ears as far as those pitches going to happen. Kind of had the people talking for a decent while in 2013 at least. It was just a good concept that he got some of his swagger back. But yeah, I just look at it. It's a good album here. It's just kind of the concept. It really has some appeal. I do feel like Best Thing Smoking is better, but this is not a bad project. I look after it. It's just kind of the appeal that I mean, that particular album just had more dynamite hits in terms of like the more ones like Rubber Band Banks and some of the songs like 100 Yard Dash, Rubber Band Banks, Shoulder Lane, some of those type of ones. My Girl with Ti, some of those type of pitches. Those particular songs just had a lot more affable type. But I will say this is more trendy. So if you're looking for something a little bit more flashy, a little bit more style towards it, this is probably the better album. But it just doesn't have like the jingle or like the ringtone type tone of something like Shoulder Lane or Rubber Band Banks. But just the concept of it. But basically, both these albums are pretty good looks, just to be able to say. Yeah, we'll go ahead and talk about the singles here. The first single is FDB, like I was saying, this is Fuck That Bitch. It's like a floaty kind of swag rap circa like the early mid 2010s, I'd have to say. It's an interesting pitch, kind of have Young Dro, who basically was a pretty stellar swag rapper back in those days, be able to be on like mid 2010s type era, just kind of out of his element, but works pretty well with this particular song. He handles this particular mixtape era early 2010s ratchet type trap type music pretty well. I'd have to say it's like a basic kind of flashy stunt tune, I would feel like, and it's like a surprising comeback Dro single, I'd have to say, and it's a pretty overall dope song. So I just look after it. I mean, I do feel like comparing FDB. I do feel like comparing FDB to Shoulder Lean. I do feel like Shoulder Lean is probably the better song as far as the overall commercial affability, and it's just the larger song. But FDB is definitely a pretty stylish type one, just for like some flashiness to kind of say, oh yeah, I remember that dude like Deuces pitches like that. It's been able to say pitches where that would particularly kind of happen. I look after just some good overall appeals. It's a more kind of stylistic type ones, like a good reverb is like a refresh of just what he had been up to 7 years later. If really all you knew from Young Dro was just Shoulder Lean. This is probably like his maybe not second biggest song. I feel like Rubber Band Banks is still his second biggest song, despite the fact that wasn't like a top 30, top 50 single. But I still have to say FDB is probably in like the top five of best Young Dro songs in terms of commercial bite. So it's just a good appeal, good comeback song. And then Strong is a pretty nice one. This has like a trendy DJ Mustard beat on here. It's a real nice one. It's like a good follow-up single and catchy ratchet dance pop, I would definitely have to say. It's a good song to get hella stoned to, and it's kind of like got a this particular song has like a goopy, murky kind of night activity feel about it, I'd have to say. So it's a real nice one. Just typical DJ Mustard sound, just some of those type pitches, the standard ratchet dance bop. Definitely like the appeal behind it. You know, that ratchet type sound starting to blow up between like 2012 to about early 2015. So it's just a good concept that Young Dro rode the trends of some of those type things, kind of advanced past like early 2010s trap and mixtape type era. But there's a lot of these styles on here. It just works pretty well. It just has a good amalgamation. Some of this is just a nice one. This is I feel like this is probably a better follow up single than like the appeal behind what Rubber Band Banks kind of had, even though probably Rubber Band Banks probably had more chart appeal than this particular song Strong. But it's just a good 1-2 punch for both these. This Young Dro nailing these, so it just ups his repertoire, I'd have to say. So yeah, the thing about this particular album is just the fact that there is a good affability about this. I feel like the social score is going to get solid enough, I would have to say. But if you are looking for more songs like FDB and Strong, there's not a ton of more full blown records like that as far as those pitches going to happen. The thing I've noticed about a lot of folks when they get DJ Mustard beats and use that as like a single, a lot of times folks don't have like 2 or 3 DJ Mustard beats. I don't know if he was just expensive at the time and he was just charging a lot, and that's the reason why folks only would get one. But just kind of concept that if you really do like the song Strong, there's not another song like that on this album. It's not another DJ Mustard type one. I mean, there are some mixtape era 2010s trap type ones like Bad Bitch, I'm Cold, and like there's another one on here like Bad Bitch, I'm Cold, and Nope, some of those type of ones. But I look after it, yeah, this kind of happens to be a thing. But yeah, there's basically 14 songs in this particular album, and out of those 14 songs, I wound up recommending 10. So it's a decent enough pitch to kind of get this. I feel like this is an above average project. Like I said, I probably feel like Best Thing Smoking is just the overall more quality record, I'd have to say. But I look after the appeal behind it. This definitely is pretty, you know, it is above average. There are some gems on here. This is a little bit more balanced, and it kind of does things as the more of like a centered. It has more centerage towards it more so than the swag rap album Best Thing Smoking, I'd have to say. I mean, there were moments like We Lied off of Best Thing Smoking. That was kind of like a ladies grab, cash grab. We Lied was kind of like a ladies grab song off of Best Thing Smoking. I feel like there is at least 2 songs like that. I feel like Take You There nails it better than Hello off this particular album for doing that. But it's just it has more of like composition about it this time. It's not quite as reckless, and just the overall tone of just like more. I mean, there's definitely some turn up songs on here, but just the more centeredness towards it is just surprising about it. But yeah, there's just some natural moments more so than there were on Best Thing Smoking. But yeah, the 4 songs I don't recommend here. Just to be easier to say those would just be Hello, Dewan and Spody, Free Fall, and Corner Boys. So basically, Free Fall and Corner the song Free Fall and the song Corner Boys are both more kind of just like the songs Free Fall and Corner Boys are both more kind of just radio grab type ones, just more makeshift type ones to kind of get for just like that relief of just got done with work or class at like 4 or 5 p.m. pitches like that, just more stark and just the more kind of just rambunctious kind of optimism about them to just kind of have like a different tone, just a different pitch to kind of have Young Dro do some of these type ones. These sorts of songs were not on Best Thing Smoking from 2006, so it's just a lot more. I mean, there were probably. I just feel like these makeshift grabs just didn't really have as much appeal. I mean, Young Dro does have some better makeshift songs on this particular album, like the song Odds, and I feel like even Hello, despite the fact that I don't recommend that song, is just a better nailing of that. But some of these type ones are just more kind of starry-eyed type ones that just didn't have the appeal. Hello is just kind of one that's kind of like a more real talk type song. There's definitely some winter brush of ones that just are kind of like the realness, like it's shit is real out here type tones. Like there's some songs like that. I kind of feel like Odds kind of does that in particular, but Hello just nails it to like a lesser degree of trying to get that. Has a more pop-ish kind of radio grab type appeal of it, but it just kind of feels like a glitzy type factor of like, you know, shit's changed, some of those type tones, but it just doesn't overall nail the appeal as far as well as like the song Oz does. It's not quite as compelling. And then Dwan and Spodie is just kind of like another trap type one, but it's just a little bit more of like a starchy type beat. It's just one that I didn't have as much I mean, it really has like a similarity to like songs like Nope and I'm Cold. It definitely sounds like something that Migos or some of those folks would have done in like early 2010s type fare, or just something that feels like very like I like the trap centricness about this one. It may just be like the overall composition of the song topic. I just feel like this probably needed to be a differential type one. If it had just been like a turn up song, it just would have had a better title, something like that. But I look after it, the composition behind the song just didn't have as much like user friendliness type towards it. Just to be able to say it just kind of felt like one that just felt a little bit awkward. It's kind of, you know, just composition of the song was just not as nailed. So that just happens to be a thing. It's not a bad song full blown, but it's just kind of concept just feels kind of sketchy. I would feel like more. But yeah, talk about some of these excellent type ones on here. I definitely feel like Hammer Time's a pretty nice one. It's like a good day after hours excitement. I would feel like it's like a decent end of makeshift flip mode. Fun to kind of get here. Just the concept of flip mode, just when things are ending, just getting towards like getting ready to turn up a bit, but it's just kind of more in between, just kind of more. There are some excitement songs on here. I definitely feel like a song like I feel like a song like Nope also does that as well, but it's just a good one. This song Hammer Time's a good one to smoke one to and vibe out and just appreciate sometimes. But yeah, I would feel like Hammer Time is just some good excitement to kind of get towards that, just to smoke one, kind of concentrate. Just Hammer Time is like a good primer for getting ready to turn up a bit, some of that type buzz. It just really appreciating the times. It's yeah, I would say that Hammer Time is like a good one for flip mode type modes as far as getting ready to smoke a little bit and just kind of have like some primers for like some further excitement as far as those pitches kind of happen. Not quite amongst like the club setting pitches like that. This it's kind of Hammer Time is more of a primer. Songs like Strong, FDB, Bad Bitch, some of those type ones are more amongst like the night, it has to say, but it is an excellent concept. So Power Up is a pretty nice one. This is like a dramatic and kind of tensive throwback to like mid 2000s mixtape feel. I would feel like some of those type projects by Young Dro, like the album Best Thing Smoking, and then the mixtape Day One, some of those type pitches. It's a real nice feel towards it. It's like a jittery kind of primer for like a glitzy night, I would have to say, and it's a pretty lively song. So I just appreciate the concept. This really feels like something Jeezy would have done. It's a good pitch. I like some of this throwback to some of those type vibes, considering that that's where Young Dro came from. I'm glad that he has some of those type moments for folks that remember him from 2006 or so, 2005, 2006. Is the fact, I mean, it's definitely dope that he even put out this album, because like I said, not every single person, like Blood Raw, some of those type folks, Blood Raw and Two Pistols and Rocco, some of those type folks never really put out other albums as far as those pitches, folks from like the ringtone rap and more snap rap type era. So it's just a good pitch to kind of get some of that just in. It's like a throwback to some of that, but Power Up's a good example of that. Bad Bitch is another one that's an example of some throwback. It's like a creeping kind of vintage mid 2000s slash early 2010s blend, I would feel like. This definitely reminds me of like Trap or Die with like some rollout kind of 2010s trap type vibes here. And by rollout, I mean vehicle cruise, just pull up type music in like a glitzy type sense. It just has that relative appeal, just being something from like those particular days, remembering things. If you remember Jeezy's Trap or Die, Young Dro's Day One, some of those type of pitches. You remember like the mid 2000s snap rap, some of those type pitches still having like some mixtape type trap fare from like the early 2010s, folks like Yo Gotti and Migos and Future and some of those type folks. It's a good vibe to kind of mesh those styles, and it does it well. I mean, for the most part, it's good to see that folks from those particular times from 2005, 2006 are not salty about the fact that the times had kind of changed, you know, 7 years later as far as those pitches going to happen. So it's an excellent concept. And even T.I. feels right at home on some of these. That's another folk that shows up, like T.I., obviously, with him being on the Grand Hustle. And T.I. shows up a few times with him being the head of the Grand Hustle label. It's good to see some throwback on the Young Dro and T.I. songs. Now, it's not quite as much of like a 1-2. It's not as much of like a KO as it was before, but these are good songs. Both the songs that T.I. are on, I recommend. So it's a good combination, but it just doesn't feel as much of like has as much juice and pungency as it does in 2006. If you're expecting another song like Shoulder Lane, or another song like even Strip from like his 2010 album No Mercy, some of those type of pitches, this would I say is not really as full blown, but it is. I do like these combination songs. I definitely encourage like the concept of getting more T.I. and Young Dro type songs, top back remix, some of those type ones. But they're definitely a creeping type one. So Odds is a nice one as well. It's like a cool weather, kind of brushy, real living grime of a song. I had to say it's definitely like some step out kind of makeshift commute. I would feel like good winter brush to kind of have here. Definitely some mixtape flavor. It's definitely like some makeshift commute and like a mixtape flavor. I'd have to say it's a good get to it song to kind of get here, and it's pretty dope. So I just appreciate the concept. Jeezy's pretty good at doing these sorts of songs too, just a taste of real life, being able to say, shit's real out here. Some of those type tones, just like I was saying with the song Hello, but this song just pulls it off better. Just has a more brushy type feel that just nails it. It's a good concept being able to get some of that. Overall, I like the bite of this particular song is some good. Just kind of the difference between what Young Dro had been up to since then. It kind of has like a dramatic intro. It takes like 30, 40 seconds for the song to start, but I look after it's just a good appeal behind it. It's kind of seeing what's been going on. Real nice, appealing, brushy kind of song in terms of the production, just the overall appeal behind it. And the thing about it is, Young Dro's pretty good on these lyrics as well. I mean, it's just a good concept. He's not quite as much swag rap this time, but look after it's still a good concept. Kind of get some of that. I do like the appeal behind it. It just feels like it's not as much on the forefront. It just feels like the styles he kind of more mimics like the trap sounds of like folks when like you think of someone like the way Future would rap or Travis Scott would rap or Migos would rap, some of those cadences that like the 2010s trap gonna do. If you missed Young Dro when he would talk about the salamander sandals and some of those type of pitches that he would say in like Arm and Hammer propaganda, some of that type of stuff that he would say when he would have like these, colorful type things that he would say in like rubber band banks and shoulder lane, some of those type pitches. It's just I feel like he is a good lyricist, some of that type tone, but it's more kind of conducive to like the trendy type times. It's just kind of I like I said, I feel like Young Dro is kind of more of an afterthought on this album in terms of like his casual appeal, but it's still a good album. Nope is like a 2010s mixtape flavor buzz. I would definitely feel like it's kind of an in between evening commute. I'd have to say this is a song that gets you high, similar to Hammer Time. I'd have to say just not as rock centric, but just within the production. I'd say, and this song's a pretty good mood to kind of have here. And it's definitely a good primer. Just the excitement. I feel I do appreciate this product for having some excitement songs. Particular kind of goes just the concept of just like, yep, I'm getting ready to get turned up. Some of those type ones. Hammer Time definitely had this appeal. Is what I mean, and in some cases, it's just overall the excitement and just things being thrown. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're getting ready to head to like a house party or a nightclub and get ready to get hell torn up. But this may be the fact paydays coming up, just things are going good, pitches like that, just within that tone, just really has some good emphatic type feels kind of get here. It's a lot of congratulative type bravado that works pretty well, just like the emphasis behind it. I'm Cold's pretty good song as well. It's like a super mixtape buzz single. I would feel like this reminds of like Future and Yo Gotti, some of those type folks that I'd say from like the early 2010s. Like a pretty good street cut from this reminds me of like a Future and Yo Gotti street cut from like their mixtape days as far as those pitches kind of happen. Pretty good stunt song. It's like some good early 2010s knock that is particularly kind of has here. And Young Dro definitely sounds pretty similar to like, just folks like Lil Durk, some of those type folks. It's actually interesting that Lil Durky sounds similar to some of those type folks, Young Thug, some of those type folks in particular, just because that was kind of before their sheer full blown time as far as that goes. But Young Dro is from Atlanta, so he probably knew about some of this when they were like bubbling and brewing. So it's just an excellent concept to kind of get there. Homeboys is a nice bop too. This has Doe B on there. Unfortunately, he has passed, but it's a good concept. RIP to him. I look after this pitch. It's like a bleary kind of quick times, kind of extensiveness. I'd have to say it's like a glitzy kind of nightclub noise. I would feel like here, good marinate in the club, some pitches like that. Just appreciate the times. It's like definitely a song to appreciate some social liveness. Just kind of get here. So this is just an emphatic type one. Really appreciate the glitz behind this one. This reminds me of something like Joe Budden has done. It's a real kind of bleary type one. It's a little bit more just not looking back, pitches like that, just really living fast. Some of those type tones just be able to get just within the tone behind it. It's real excellent type fare behind it. Probably has one of the most sparkling productions on here. I'd say just the most bleary and just overall blurry type one. This would be a good one to play with like the songs FDB and Strong. When I talked about this album, not as much full blown having some of those night bops, so it's just kind of the appeal behind it. I feel like in terms of the most immediate ones, it probably would be FDB, Strong, Homeboys, and probably like I'm Cold, some of those type of pitches. But there are plenty of good bops on here to kind of get. I'm trying to think. I don't think I've talked about Take You There. Is another nice one. It's like a breezy, kind of lavish, emphatic commute of a song. I'd have to say, and a pretty good ladies gem at that. I'd have to say. It's like a sparkly kind of date evening, kind of cheese a bit, and just kind of enjoy the goodies type song. By enjoy goodies, Swishers, pizza, some of that type fare. Just get crunk a bit, 2 liters of soda, wine, dine, some pitches like that. Just appreciate the times with ladies as far as those pitches kind of happen. Pick up some good stuff. Basically, kind of set the night. Just appreciate the kickback, some of that type fare. The thing about it is it's just I really appreciate like the emphaticness behind it. This is the sort of song that Rick Ross would. It just has a real extravagant type feel amongst the production type fare of it. Just the real breeziness behind it just has a lot of appeal. It's not really so much like a full blown summer song, but I just look after it. Just has a lot of good crispness. That this is sort of stuff like if you were to take something like Whatever You Like by Ti, just with like a more 2010s type emphasis behind it, I just feel like that sort of emphaticness that this is like a feel good lady song to kind of get for like a date evening pitch like that. Is just a good song. It's a good song. And when I said it's a good song to cheese to, obviously smiling a bunch, just really appreciating the times. It's a song that you wouldn't be in a foul mood, kind of brooding or preoccupied, something like that. Just a good concept where you're just cheesing the whole night. Good pitch behind that. But yeah, that's the concept about this particular album. So the score I'm going to give this album, be recommending 10 songs out of 14 on here. I'm going to give this album like an 8.25 out of 10. I feel like there's definitely some good moments on here. It's just the fact that some of these more kind of optimistic, starry-eyed type ones just didn't nail the vibe nearly as full-blown well as they probably needed to. I feel like some of these, I mean, kind of combined with like the realness factor, at least the last two songs, like, but at least say Free Fall and Corner Boys just didn't really nail the particular vibe. So just in terms of trying to do something like Tupac, Tech Nine, or Eminem, just within that concept of a little bit more homely, uplifting type pitch, just didn't really have as much sparkle towards it. And I kind of feel like Hello was like a decent attempt at being able to be like, oh, it's just a nice radio grab to kind of get some of that real life type fare as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just a taste of some real talk, but just didn't nail it nearly as well. And then the song Dewan, then the song Dewan and Spodee was just kind of one that just didn't have the same bite towards it. So this is kind of the concept. I feel like it's a trap centric type one that had a relative appeal, but just not the same sparkle towards it. So it's just kind of the concept. But yeah, the social score as a result, I'm gonna give the social score probably like a solid 8 out of 10. I feel like there's some good moments. Definitely appreciate the trendy kind of mixtape type buzz. There is at least one DJ Mustard type beat on here. There is at least some mixtape buzz songs on here as far as those pitches kind of happen. I just would look after it. Decent taste in nightlife. It's actually pretty extensive just within the tone of being able to say like the flavor just being out and about, but I just look after it. It's just kind of within different tenses, I'd have to say. It's not as much full blown. Apart from the song Strong, there's really not a ton of songs that get hella tore up, I'd have to say. I feel like probably FDB and Strong are like the ones where you get the most tore up, but it's actually more kind of composed, I would have to say. It definitely has some outing type flair, but this is kind of the pizzazz of this. Is a very emphatic and appreciative type product. It's not so much appreciative, but this is just a more emphatic and kind of glad type product, I would have to say, as far as those pitches kind of happen. But I definitely look after the flavor behind it. It's pretty high and effective, but I'd say this is within different tones. Not as much just full blown get shit faced, get torn up, some of those type pitches, but it definitely is social to like a pitch. But this is a briefer type project, but I look after it. It does have like the bite behind it, and it's pretty trendy within the times, has some mixtape type tones, some pitches like that on here, just in the tone behind it. But it just gives you a taste of like basically between about 5 p.m. to about 2 o'clock in the morning for the most part. But it just is kind of, there's not as many full, it's just not blitz after blitz after blitz in terms of like just getting tore up. But there is some social bite, but it's a, like I said, it's a more glad and emphatic type project. So I look after 8 social. In terms of the future, like Young Dro has actually dropped a series of projects apart from this one and Best Thing Smoking. There was one that came out in 2015. There might be a few other projects here. It's just within different pitch. I question what he did with some of these later projects after like 20 after like the current IG life kind of 2010s trap kind of took over. I'd have to say it'd be an interesting pitch kind of see that, but this is an excellent concept. This is a better project than it is, and I'd have to say it's a good follow up to Best Thing Smoking, even though Best Thing Smoking might have the overall more distinction towards it in terms of overall bite. This is actually a pretty excellent album here, I'd have to say, just within the concept. It's very trendy, social, has the style behind it, but it just feels maybe less distinct, but still it's a pretty overall heavy hitting type one.